Back to school is around the corner, and this rock painting design is a journey of trial and errors, so let's get started. Today I'm working with homemade stones, so I'm going to base coat with Liquitex gesso, and then I'm going to go on top of that with white paint as a base coat. So the idea behind this design is to create the composition notebooks that we're all used to, that you see around this time of year in all of the stores. It's kind of that black and white mottled background. And I had this idea to make ladybugs out of this design and to also use Crackle medium to try and achieve that black and white mottled design. So I'm starting first by just kind of outlining the wings and the head of the ladybug to give myself a guide of where we'll be working. This is the largest of the stones that I'm going to do, and I want to start with the white as my bottom color under the Crackle medium. So now I'm going to apply the Crackle medium to the wings of the ladybug. And the instructions on the bottle with the Crackle medium say to let it dry for a full hour. And when I tested Crackle medium years ago, I learned that I got the best results when I just let it dry to the touch. So that's what I'm going to let it do here today. This is also a black ladybug that I'm going to do with the black base coat, black background. And again, I'm going to apply the Crackle medium and then I'm going to let it dry just to the touch, not for a full hour, but enough to where it's not tacky when I touch it before I add the top coat of the contrasting color. The consistency of the Crackle medium is thinner than the acrylic paint, so it goes on nice and easy, and then it kind of dries, just kind of a nice thin layer, and you can just tell when it's not tacky, and that's the point that I'm aiming for. I don't want my fingerprint to be left in it or anything like that, but I'm not going to wait a full hour. I did not have great results when I did that before. Now I'm going to start to add the contrasting colors. So on the bigger white bug, it's going to be black over the white on the wings, and almost immediately you can start to see the crackle effect start to happen as the black paint dries. So you'll see kind of lines, and I kind of wiped off a little extra here on accident, so I covered that back up with the black, and then I'm going to do the other side, and as I'm doing it you can see the first wing starting to kind of get that crackled effect. But it was not quite the effect that I was hoping for. I feel like there's not enough white coming through to create the look of that composition notebook, kind of that mottled black and white look. So I'm going to try again with the white over the black and see if we have any different results on this side. Again, you can kind of see the crackling starting to happen as the white paint starts to dry, but it's not quite giving the look that I was hoping for. I thought this might be a shortcut to creating that look, but it looks actually more like wood is what it reminds me of, that this might be neat with two colors of brown. So here you can see a little more of the white once the black dries, but it's not good enough. So I'm going to take this silicone tool and just kind of muddle some white paint and some black paint on top of this and kind of mix them together until I get the look that I'm going for. You may or may not have these tools laying around. They're kind of a random one. I don't use them a whole lot. I got them to help with applying chunky glitter onto rocks because it kind of helps pat it down and it slips on and off easily. So you may not have these silicone tools at home to try this with. So some of the other things that I would suggest, you could use dotting tools and kind of swirl the colors together, kind of dot the paint on kind of thick and swirl it together. You could use the thin end corner of a makeup sponge. You could use paint brushes. So it's just kind of a trial and error, but the main point of this is to try and just get splotches. I think that would be my keyword of the day, is getting splotches of both the black and white onto the rock and then kind of squish them and muddle them together to create that composition notebook look. Now, to really create the look of the composition notebook, I want to create the label that you see on a normal composition notebook. So I'm going to create a little kind of rounded rectangular shape for myself using my soapstone pencil from Happy Dotting Company. And then I'm going to take a nail buffer and just kind of smooth out where I'm going to paint over for this label, because there's a little bit of texture between the Crackle medium and then the modeling paint. It's got a little bit of texture to it, and I want to try and smooth it out as much as possible before I paint over the top of it. I'm also going to help with that texture by adding the Liquitex gesso as a base coat for my label first. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to get the shape down, kind of get a nice little base coat over that texture, and then I'm going to go over that with the white paint to give it a nice bright white label look. After this paint dried, there was a little crackle that snuck through. You can see it right here. So what I'm going to do is kind of lightly buff it with the nail buffer to kind of smooth it out. And then I'm going to take the Liquitex gesso and the white paint and a disposable eyeliner brush and just kind of fill it. So I'm kind of spackling my little crack here, and then I'm going to pat it down with a damp, flat paintbrush just to smooth it all out. Under normal circumstances, to add some detail, I would use this fine line pen that's kind of like a brush pen, but there's still some bumpy texture on there, so instead I'm going to use my detail nail art brush because I feel like it can roll over the texture with a little more consistency than that pen. So the first thing I'm going to do is take some black paint, and I'm going to give an outline slightly inside of that white label all the way around. So nice rounded corners, and just kind of come around the whole thing with the black paint. And this is going to have some bumps and bruises to it, right? It's not going to be perfectly straight or perfect thickness all the way around, but the nice thing about that is that you can come back with the same brush and some white paint and kind of correct it. I'm also going to add a straight line, kind of where you would write whatever you would write on the label of your composition notebook. Maybe you would write the subject if it was math or English, or your name, or whatever you were going to write on there. That's what I'm putting those extra lines for. And then again, cleaning up with the white paint to kind of smooth out the black lines. Now we're going to give some personality to this bug and give it some eyeballs with a really big dotting tool. And I don't know what happened on my second dot. I should have re-dipped in the paint, but somehow I had a little explosion off the top of it that made these little irregular splatters, I guess. So I'm smoothing out the paint in the middle, and then I'm going to take just a damp paintbrush and try and scoop off as much of that overflow splatter as I can. Just kind of clean it up, and then I'm going to come back with some white paint and cover up as much of what's left there, just so that you can't tell there was an overflow. And then I also did another new top dot on top of that eye because it wasn't the same size as the other one. Then I'm going to do the same thing here on the black background bug with white paint and create some eyeballs. And then I'm going to use a disposable eyeliner brush to kind of smooth out the extra paint in the middle of those dots, and then the detailed nail art brush to create some eyelashes on this one, just to give it a little bit of different personality. Then I'm going to follow through after those dots are dry and add some black dots to create some pupils and a little white smiley face, and then some little dots in the black pupils just to give some final touches to how these eyes look. And then we'll come back to the larger bug and do the same thing, except we're going to add some extra dots for the eyes. So we're going to do the white to add kind of some dimension and background, and then I'm going to do a little more of a detailed smiley face with an open mouth smile and a tongue inside that we'll do kind of by creating a heart-shaped, kind of a roundish heart-shaped thing with a red paint pen, and then fill in the back with the black paint pen, and it just creates a different kind of look. This one's got more space to play with, so that's why I did that. And then I'm going to add another black dot in the middle just because the white dots looked a little strange to me. If you don't have the homemade stones, this design works on regular rocks as well. Look for oval or round shaped rocks. Thank you so much for stopping by to watch. I'll see you next time. Take care.